Good morning, everybody. Good morning. We still have a whole bunch of folks signing on, so we'll get started in just a moment here. Just a reminder, everybody except our presenters should be muted, and we should have videos off for everyone except presenters and our interpreters. And we are working for the next one to have some cool music playing when you guys come in. I haven't quite gotten there yet. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us this morning. I see the participant number keeps ticking up. We're just close to 100 folks. Oh, look at that, we just hit 100 people. Yay, thank you everybody. My name's Naomi Castro and I'm a senior director with the Career Ladders Project and a dual enrollment specialist, as are most of the folks on this call right now. So we're really excited that you're all with us here and joining this problem solving series. We do have one more to go next week. We've got some technological announcements to get us started. Everyone is muted and their videos are off upon entry. If your video pops back on, if you could be so kind as to turn that off for us. If you're joining by both computer and phone, please connect your two logons together. The cool way to do that is on your phone, you press the pound key, your participant ID from your video, and then the pound key again, and it'll connect you. And if you have any technological challenges or questions during the webinar, please use the chat. Just type in the word tech in all caps and then your question, and we'll get right back to you. So for today, you have a whole team of folks from Career Ladders Project. There's myself, there's Amal Amanda Isa, Sherry Shojai, and Eder Flores. They are all on the line doing cool things behind the scenes. So that's our CLP team. And the purpose of these webinars is to really talk about some issues that have come up for us in this crazy rapid move to online, where all of our high schools and our colleges are don't have face-to-face classes at the moment, and so we're doing things like focusing on issues of access, familiarity with online platforms, student support services, communication, big picture issues, and also opportunities. So like I said, this has been every week and we've got one more week to go. And then we're gonna look at going to an every other week format if that's what folks want. CLP has a link. We're gonna put all these links in the chat for you. But we have a repository where we keep all the recordings, the presentations, and the resources from the previous webinars, so you'll be able to access all of those. And we have a new protocol we're trying out for asking questions in the chat. So you can imagine one webinar we had nearly 200 people on, the chat gets moving pretty fast. So if you have a question for a specific college, we ask you to type the name of that college in all caps and then ask your question. If you have a general question, please just type the word general in all caps and then your question. And if you have an idea or an approach that you'd really like to share, please type idea in all caps and then what you'd like to share. And we will filter all of those to our awesome presenters. And so we have a few updates that we'd like to share with you. These updates are coming from the Chancellor's office. We'll show you how to log on to those. And by the way, this webinar is being supported by the California Community College Chancellor's office and the College Futures Foundation. So we want to thank them very much for that support. And CLP is planning the format. So you guys know a lot of regulations have been modified, including things like the excused withdrawal, suspension of the pass, no pass regulations. There's been lots of resources about technology. So there's NetTutor, Cranium Cafe, Labster. looking at virtual labs. And then there was some exciting things this week in particular. The New York Times is offering all teachers and high school students, so especially appropriate for dual enrollment, free access to newyorktimes.com. There's a link on how to get to that. And the Sacramento State teacher candidates have created an online academy where they have a lot of lessons across a variety of K-12 subjects. And so that's really fantastic. So we're really seeing folks just kind of, step it up. But we learned all about all of these from the Chancellor's Office updates, and we can show you how to get those. So if you go to the Chancellor's Office website, you see that big red bar at the top of the page. If you'll click on that, and on our next slide, we can show you, that takes you to the coronavirus updates. And over where that big blue arrow is, there's a way to subscribe and connect. And these emails are sent out regularly. They're the best for educators in the state. They're a really great resource. We also have on the CLP website, we compiled some resources that are very specific for dual enrollment, some of the Chancellor's Office updates, as well as other kinds of resources that are very helpful. And as I said, all of that will be in the chat, and we'll send out an invite for everybody who signed the RSVP list. We'll send you an update and get all that information to you. If you haven't, if you didn't RSVP, if somebody forwarded this meeting information to you, please drop your email address in the chat and we'll make sure and get it out to you. And so today we're really excited to have two colleges featured. We have Hartnell College and Long Beach City College. And we're gonna get it started with our wonderful colleague, Laurencia Walker, who's the Director of College Readiness at Hartnell College. So Laurencia, go ahead and take it away. Laurencia, you are on mute. So if you could start over for us. There you go. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you. Sorry about that. Good morning, everyone. Excited to be here this morning. Wanted to give a quick shout out to Jerry Jose Alonso, my colleague who's out there and critical to all the work that we're doing here, along with our other colleagues across campus from admissions and records, our deans, vice presidents, and our high school partners. Our overall approach to the whole COVID-19 situation and associated challenges has been one that is grounded in compliance as well as compassion, and really a means for us to really put equity into an equity practice model. Our interpretations of all the guidance that we've been receiving from both the K-12 sector as well as the Chancellor's Office for the California Community Colleges, our interpretations have been that this was to make things more feasible, not necessarily to create added barriers. And so we've always kept that in mind in the way that we are applying a lot of this guidance. So when we look at converting classes to online instruction and the requisite online learning that needs to occur, we really just took a moment to stop and listen to our high school partners and learning how they are applying their guidance and communicating on a site-by-site level, learning, okay, what are they doing in terms of technology, their instructional and learning strategies, and then compiling that information and sharing it with our internal partners as it applies to what we're doing at the college. So we shared that with our vice presidents, our deans, the various faculty, and then subsequently our students. And we were able to synthesize all this data in the following chart. This is a template that we use throughout the semester to help manage a lot of our courses. This is something that we created internally. This is just part of some of the way that we've synthesized the information. These are two of our districts in which we work with. So one is a single site district. Gonzales has one high school. And then in our Salinas Union High School district, it's a multi-high school campus. So we've changed some of the identifiers there, but we really broke down the faculty updates. So who was going to contact the faculty? And then at the bottom, we had those updates in terms of the closure timelines and things of that sort. So this document has since been through many iterations. So with the variance in course conversion timelines, instructional modalities and tools, attendance accounting and grading from both sectors of institutions, we've really, again, had to use that chart to help manage that. participating in the webinars that CLP has been putting on has been extremely helpful. We have a regional meeting that is hosted by Sharon Turner that has been helpful, and we've also connected with some more of our local colleagues. And just doing some of our own research, how are things happening around the state in response to COVID-19 and the transition to remote learning, instruction and services. But also we want to take some time to learn what's happening internally. With admissions and records, we know that our classes, our dual enrollment classes, follow a daily and weekly attendance accounting module. So with the guidance that was provided, that's what we're going to go with, what it states for daily and weekly attendance. When we look at any of the challenges that we're having in a counseling class or English or history, what are some of the challenges maybe that there's experiencing on campus that were traditionally on the main campus, and how are they navigating that? Because one thing that we all want to remember is that our dual enrollment students are younger versions of our college age students at the community college. So some of the experiences that they're going through, maybe with their older siblings or friends or relatives or colleagues, are experienced as well. And so learning from them as well, how to apply some of these equitable strategies to transition to online learning. And then also, how is the guidance being applied in other contexts? For example, we have courses, my colleague offers courses in our local county jails where technology isn't an option. So how are they navigating that? And so we were able to take some strategies from our other partners in other classes and learn what's going on. We also were able to get feedback from some of the other faculty that are assigned to dual enrollment classes. And in comparison to your traditional classes on campus, are you getting the same response rates? Are you getting lower response rates? So one history faculty, for example, stated, you know, Laurencia, I'm getting pretty much similar information from my dual enrollment class as I'm getting from the main campus. You know, Canvas was kind of glitchy. So then we looked at just emailing information. And so I was able to connect back with some of our other partners on campus and let them know of these updates as well. And then we just continue, we have and we will continue to facilitate discussions site by site with our high schools, the various departments on campus. There's some faculty I talk to almost every day now, and I'm sure that'll continue on an ongoing and as needed basis to not only communicate strategies and the challenges that we're facing, but also opportunities. How can we grow and learn from this? So one update, obviously, is the grading options for students. And really, it's the extended timelines and deadlines in which students can petition for certain things. And so all students have received the email communication, but what our office does is sometimes take the information and make either a little bit more visual pleasing document, or in the case of this one, we really want students to try and stay in class and exercise their resiliency when possible and stay in the class. They may be receiving an A. And so instead of dropping it or changing it to pass, no pass, so we have the little symbol up there with the A+ and the alliterative value of ask, access, and act. There's a lot of people we want them to touch base with before actually changing to either a pass, no pass, or early withdrawal. But here are all the contacts, the access to the academic supports, which will also be hyperlinked. And then at the very bottom is the excuse withdrawal option. Hartnell is not requiring any additional documentation if students drop between a certain window due to the COVID response. And then obviously there's the pass, no pass option as well, which deadline has been extended. In the event where it's just too much for a student, the high school partner has said, you know, look, that it's just too much for them. That's not going to impact them too harshly on the high school side, and very limited ramifications on the college side. Some students will elect to, in fact, drop. And so what our office does, and another quick point of clarification is we offer the classes that we're talking about in this context are our CCAP courses. And so when the student wants to drop the class, they can drop it on their own. However, we like to do a manual process since this is a fairly new initiative at Hartnell College. So we create this document, submit this to our admissions and records, and then this will serve as the record for the student wanting to drop, and it'll be done manually on the back end. Finally, we're just creating an open space for students to connect with us. So we have our weekly office hours, whether it's one student that shows up. We've actually had quite a few faculty pop in that are assigned to dual enrollment and ask some questions. We'll continue to be there. We'll see how frequently we need to be available, but we're just trying to make sure students are aware of their opportunities and that we're here to support them. Again, if they're a Hartnell College student, there may be a whole nother set of services that may be useful for them in the current crisis. And so we want to make sure that they're aware of those as well, and that Hartnell is here to support them So that pretty much does it for my portion of the presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. We have some questions for you from the chat. We have quite a few. How do students know to ask about their grading options?
Well, that's where our points of contact at the high school have been very helpful. A lot of the high schools have moved to a pass no pass option. And so just reiterating that the college has that option as well, but the letter grades are still in effect. And so it's just a lot of communication with the points of contact, emails, phone calls, text messages.
So communicating in every single way, telepathy, no, just kidding.
If possible, yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully.
And so here's another question for Hartnell. For students who didn't make the transition online, but who have not formally dropped their classes, are you pursuing, how are you processing that EW for these students?
So again, that's where we're connecting with the faculty and the high school person. Most of our classes are also dual credit. So if in fact they want to drop the college class, it will have implications for their high school. And so by default, again, we'll go through rosters as well. They will get the EW, and that'll be our goal for students that if we're, for whatever reasons, unable to contact them, that'll be what they'll receive. And then again, it's really connecting with the high school, because if we're not hearing from them, then the high school's probably not, and there may be a larger issue at hand.
Mm-hmm. And then just another question. Do you spoke just a little bit about the Bay Area dual enrollment meetings that are hosted by Sharon Turner, who might even be on this webinar. Could you just talk about those a little bit, and what's that process been like, and how has it supported each other, the other practitioners?
Sure, yeah, it's just a smaller version of this. We sort of reflect on the conversations that have occurred and maybe a little bit more regional twist to it. And then, so it's just been another space for us to talk things through and sort of debrief the CLP webinars.
Oh, excellent. Okay, great. And so then looking forward, have you started with your enrollment for the fall? And if so, like how are you going to have students enroll for the fall?
Sure. So,
or the summer.
Right. And so we actually, Jerry and I met with our admissions and records lead, as well as our Dean of Enrollment Services yesterday evening. And we presented two scenarios, some of which we were able to get some information from the CLP meetings and our regional partners. So we're going to look at two options. One is where we have all of our documents right now are fillable PDFs. And so we're going to try and work with the high school to have a designee to collect all those electronically and maybe house them either in a Google folder or a Canvas shell. And then our office will serve as a liaison to then subsequently connect with admissions and records to get the students enrolled. The ideal process, which we're also going to pursue, is following the chafing model and using FormStack. So we're going to get the ball rolling on that. Everyone's excited.
Great, great. A couple more questions. One is your campus open, and are you allowed to work on site for these meetings?
Our campus is closed, and the directive has been that no faculty are to be on campus. And so we have not, my office has not been active on campus, but we've been all remote, and most of our services are remote. There are extenuating circumstances where staff are on campus, but we would need to check in with our supervisor first. In my case, the vice president.
There was a general question about a contact for the Bay Area dual enrollment group. We'll make sure and put that in the chat and in the follow-up email. And then another question before we move on to Long Beach. Do your high school students have access to Canvas? And what, if so, what was that process like? I'm sorry, Laurencia, we cannot hear you. Laurencia may be having some connectivity issues. Okay, well, we will save that question then for a little later on in the webinar. And now we're going to move on to our dear friends from Long Beach. We have Tara Teodoro, who is the Director of Admissions and Records. We have Lizette Villegas, who is the Career Pathways Manager. And answering questions in the chat, we've got Rio Medina, and she can also chime in too, who is a Career Pathways Coordinator. So Tara, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm going to just briefly touch upon some of the decisions that were made for our campus regarding excused withdrawal and our pass no pass options. So for Long Beach City College, we have extended the deadline, like many of our partner institutions have, to May 27th. We picked that deadline because our semester ends on June 3rd, so we wanted to give students the last, maximize their time to consider whether an EW or a withdrawal is the right choice for them. Our students currently, with our technology on our campus, our faculty are able to reinstate students after they've maybe withdrawn or received a W grade. So in order to keep that going for our campus, say an instructor assigned a W and a week later, the student came back and actually wanted to continue, but just for whatever reason lost communication, access, whatever reasons in this time, the instructor can still reinstate them. So keeping that W option for our students and instructors open until May 27th. And at the end of the semester, we'll convert those withdrawals into excused withdrawals, given the Chancellor's office memos regarding being relaxed on that need for documentation in this semester, given our COVID environment. So that's our process for our students in regards to the excused withdrawal and withdrawal. And we communicated that out once that official decision was made in the executive leadership for our campus last week. So they were given communication that way, and they'll be receiving follow-up communication this week as well. I believe our intent is weekly to update all of our students on things as they continue to change. The pass no pass option for us, we've also extended to the same date. If a student would like to select the pass no pass, it's been extended until May 27th. We are still in the middle of determining, we have about, I think 30% of our courses actually were set up as an optional course. So a course that was already okay to select pass, no pass as their grading option. I know that there have been directives to allow us to be flexible as a campus for every single course, even if it was selected as only A through F, to move in that direction. We haven't officially moved there, as it says, to be determined courses that were already A through F. And those are current discussions. But the courses that are already available as optional in the system, they have until May 27th in their student system to go ahead and select pass, no pass as their grading option. Same date there. But we will be making some decisions as a campus regarding the courses that are not set up already currently as a pass no pass option. All right.
All right, thank you, Tara. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lizette Villegas, and I am the Career Pathways Manager at Long Beach City College. I manage our early college initiatives, which include dual enrollment, articulation, and credit by exam. As Naomi mentioned, we also have my colleague, Rio Medina, who is going to handle the questions in the chat, and then she'll jump in as well and answer any questions. So to provide a little context, at LBCC, we have two options for dual enrollment. We have a coordinated program that we partner with Long Beach Unified School District to implement. And we also offer individual dual enrollment options where students pretty much navigate on their own. So today I'm going to talk more about what we're doing with our coordinated program in just reaching out to students to provide support. We're very happy that there's flexibility in the deadlines for withdrawals and grades and all of that. But our goal is still to help our students stay enrolled and to be successful throughout the term. We have usually about 350 to 450 students enrolled throughout the year. This term we have 150 students. We've been very proud of our students. They consistently do well. In the fall, we had a 90% success rate. So we're really focused on keeping our success rates up and helping our students have a great experience in college, even during these challenging times. So one of the challenges that we faced has been really monitoring the status of our students in the online classes. LBCC moved to online courses about 4 weeks ago. And we've seen changes even over that short time period in just the students, of course, economic situation, home situation, and that has, of course, impacted their academic work as well, and even our drops. So we've really been trying to get proactive and stay on top of them. We're very fortunate we have a graduate student intern, Esther Kim, who's also a part of our team, and she's taken the lead on a lot of our mentoring activities. But we work together as a team, Esther, Rio, and I, to really be proactive and identify different ways of reaching out to the students and pointing them to the right resources. So the first week, when we transitioned to online courses, our main focus was contacting all of our students, getting to all of them to make sure that they had access to the technology that they needed. So we used Remind, we used email, we used phone calls, just to make sure they had internet access, they had the electronics that they needed, and that they knew how to log into Canvas. We've seen in the past that that's been a big challenge, so we just wanted to cover our bases and make sure that students would be able to continue in the courses. They actually did pretty well, and we were very fortunate that LBUSD was able to provide Chromebooks. So it really helped us kind of leverage our Chromebooks for our non-high school students, and then LBUSD provided them for the high school students. So in the following 2 weeks, we really focused on identifying students that needed assistance. And we used different forms or different sources of information to identify those students. I think we've seen in the past that students, especially high school students, don't always ask for help. So we have to be very proactive in kind of identifying the students and what their needs may be. So we started off by contacting our faculty and just checking in, having them provide a list of any students that had not participated in the classes since they went online, or who were missing assignments or had a grade lower than a C. So we were able to pull a pretty good list from there, and Esther was able to follow up with them to check in, see what was going on, see what they needed, and point them in the right direction for resources. We also checked in with our alternative high school students. We saw a greater number this semester, which we were thrilled about, but we realized that a lot of times they need a little more support. So we reached out to them individually as well, just to make sure that they were doing okay and were keeping up with their coursework. We also were able to get a report from our institutional effectiveness office that provided the status of how, if students had logged into Canvas. So that was a very helpful tool in just identifying students. We actually pulled all the dual enrollment students, so we were able to go beyond our coordinated program to also flag some of the students in our individual dual enrollment option, and make sure that if they didn't have access, just to kind of troubleshoot and see what was going on. We flagged the ones that had never logged into Canvas, or the ones that had not logged in for more than 10 days. So those were really good ways to identify students. And this is something that's actually being implemented across the campus for different programs. The counselors are also following kind of a case management model where they're checking in with students as well. So it's being used outside of our program, and we're glad that we were able to create an identifier for our dual enrollment students as well. So using all of these different sources really gave us a very solid list of leads to really flag students and be able to provide more resources to them. There was a little bit of overlap we noticed in some of the list, but we were able to flag different students. So it was great to see that we may have missed some students if we had only relied on one source of information. So we kind of started with the broad, everybody focused in on target students, and now we're moving again towards contacting all of our students, doing some follow-ups. Esther had a great idea to develop a survey to really have a better gauge of how they're doing academically, how they're doing with technology, and just identify any other issues that they may have. We noticed that some students loved getting a phone call, but not all of them did. So we are making it so that we'll start off with the survey, they'll get that via email, and then we can follow up with phone calls as well so that we can get as much information as we can. Some of this actually was sparked by the school district reaching out and asking, how our students are doing and what we could do to really provide even more support. So part of this process will include just pulling information, seeing what they need, and then working together to leverage our resources and provide exactly the type of services that they need. So this is kind of the approach we've taken over the last couple of weeks. Some of these things we were already doing. We just had to do more within a really short amount of time. But we think, we'll continue to evolve. We may scale back as we go. But our goal was really to continue supporting our students and to make sure that they stay enrolled, they stay successful, and they complete the semester.
Wow, it sounds like a lot of what you were doing already has been very helpful in this moment. We've got a lot of questions. And so I'm going to try and route some of these to Tara, if you can unmute. We have folks on the call. Most of the folks on the call are dual enrollment practitioners, either from a college or a high school. But we also have folks on the line from county offices of education, from the systems office, from foundations, from UCs and CSUs. So there's not an even understanding of what an EW is. So can you explain EW just a little bit more and how it's different from a W and what those kinds of implications are for students?
Sure. I've been at Long Beach City since August of last year. So what I found is for our community colleges, or at least for our campus, excused withdrawal came about in January of 2019, at least for our campus. We've always had a withdrawal. Excused withdrawal itself, my background is from the CSU, had existed on previous campuses for myself. So it's an excused withdrawal versus a withdrawal. And those are grading symbols that appear after a student chooses to drop from their course after the census date or the given date for your meeting pattern, whether you're in the 16-week, the first 8, late 8, or a 12-week session. They each have a different date depending on your class where you have to drop before you'll get that symbol. Sorry, as a registrar, I can talk about this for 15 minutes, so let me stop myself. I'm getting.
Well, are there implications for financial aid, for GPA, for retaking the course?
So for financial aid, a W, a withdrawal, or excused withdrawal are treated the same way. While I'm not in aid, I know that return of Title IV has been with the CARE Act and such is not taking place for this spring term per se. So we were at first focused in on the 60% mark of a semester for return of Title IV funds. But when our financial aid director spoke on some of the changes in that legislation, we felt like students earning the EW or the W at this point wouldn't harm them if they were on financial aid in that regard. For repeats, the repeat of courses, a student who takes, even if they've earned maybe a C this semester, the guidance we were given is to not count the attempt of this semester into the overall amount of attempts you're allowed. So what I was saying is that for our campus, you're allowed to try a course 3 times and petition for a 4th time. If this semester's attempt will not count toward that number of calculations. Even if for us, we also have some local rules, and it might be where everybody is, the C or better, that usually if a student receives a C or better, they aren't in the system, it stops them from repeating. With the new executive orders and rules for this semester, even that student who maybe would like to try the anatomy class one more time, and they don't want that C, they'd rather try for that A or B, they're allowed to, and the attempt from spring won't count against them.
Great, thank you. That makes it much more clear. And then another question about pass, no pass, is that equivalent as credit, no credit?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So that took me a little bit to, I'm used to seeing no credit as well. So yes, pass, no pass is the same.
And then if a student, you may have answered this already, but just to reiterate, if a student doesn't drop themselves and then just doesn't participate in the class, will they be automatically given an EW at the end of the semester?
Yeah, for at least for our campus, we've been trying to partner a lot with our instructors, and we have good communication with them anyway, at least applications and records around grade submission and expectation. So same communications that are being sent out to students. Our part-time and full-time instructors see that student version too, not a different version we made for them, just so they can even see what we've been communicating. So I've already received, since we sent last week, a handful of questions from our instructors emailing me directly, just to make sure that they understand the directive. They have support from academic affairs, their department heads, and their areas, but we do have pretty good open communication with them. And the directive they've been given is that as the semester moves on, if there is that student that the W, we have that flexibility to be compassionate this semester given where we're at and to assign the W. There have been instructors who students haven't made contact in this last 2 or 3 weeks. Let's allow them that flexibility. And if you don't hear from them at all, instead of assigning what might have been a letter grade that would have negatively impacted a GPA, let's assign the W, which will turn for our campus into the excused withdrawal.
And that kind of goes back to a point that Laurencia made earlier, compassion plus compliance. So like equals good practice. Yeah, thank you for that. That was very, very helpful. We have so many questions. This is really exciting. So maybe Lizette, or if you want to hand this over to Rio, let us know. But have you noticed a difference in the challenges students in CTE dual enrollment might be facing versus other kinds of dual enrollment?
Rio, you want to jump in? Since I see you answered a chat, you can elaborate.
Yeah, so so kind of going back to one of the questions too that also just recently got asked was, what if they just go MIA and things like that? And so our goal and something that we've really instilled into the program is making sure that we check in with our faculty on a consistent basis to be more proactive before they go MIA. I think our orientation in the beginning of the term kind of really instills to the students, we're here, reach out, please, whatever happens, try to do it before these deadlines and inform them about those deadlines, just to be a lot more proactive on that approach. But what we have seen as far as like the differences between the CTE is, I think and I noted this in the chat, was I think we've seen more of a difference of students who have support and don't have support versus the actual class itself. So we did have some CTE classes that did go remote. The fortunate part about that is that they did end early. So they were able to kind of close out of the term a lot earlier than most of the classes. And so a lot of the students weren't, having a lot of difficulty. But what we did learn is like some of those classes included Arcosa, which is one of our computer classes. And we noticed that the students that didn't have resources or access to the internet, or even just a space at home to actually do homework, that's where we saw the differences versus the students who maybe did have that space or did have that support at home. It looked a lot differently for them when they transitioned to online.
Yeah, and for any of our colleagues on the phone who aren't familiar with Canvas in particular, and certainly instructors are using lots of different platforms, but in Canvas, it's very easy to see who has logged on, how much time they've spent, and you can do an easy query to find students who haven't logged on or haven't logged on the last couple of days. So it's fairly easy to keep track of that. Laurencia, if you are available too, I have some general questions that I'd like to throw out to all of you. One is if you can describe your programs a little bit more about how many students, are the majority of classes at the high schools or at the college campus, and who's teaching the classes? Are they traditional college instructors or high school instructors who meet the minimum qualifications?
Sure. So we have predominantly, most of our classes are CCAP classes. They're offered at the high school during the regular high school day. The majority at this point, it's majority high school faculty that have been onboarded as Hartnell College adjuncts. This is Jerry and I's second year really implementing CCAP. We're a new office at Hartnell. And so we have, I think, about 1,100 students, duplicate duplicated figures across 40 sections, and that's in the academic year.
Thank you.
For us, we don't have any CCAP agreements. All of our classes are offered at our campus, and we have 2 campuses. So all of our courses are offered after school, usually 3:30, 4 p.m., kind of late afternoon. And the classes are all taught by our faculty.
Thanks. And then there's some questions on here about communication and technologies. So are any specific technologies that are kind of outside maybe the normal, what's available on campus? Things like Remind app, Grad Guru. We've heard some colleges using Google Voice. What kinds of things like that are you utilizing, if any? We'll start with Long Beach. Sorry. Lizette or Rio?
We have kind of stuck to the basics, Remind, email, phone calls. We haven't really explored any other programs. And I think phone calls have actually been the best way to really reach the students and engage with them and find out more about what's going on.
I would say the same thing. I think also being able to get this list from our institutional effective, our team has been able to get a list of those that logged into Canvas and those that haven't. So that has been kind of cool too, to kind of start tracking that and being able to really get more data as far as who's accessing that stuff, and then reporting it back to the faculty and creating this kind of network of communication about the status of the students, and then eventually obviously reaching out to the students to make sure that they're supported.
Thank you. Laurencia, did you guys have anything really different you're doing with communication?
No, nothing that's more than what's been stated. We don't use Grad Guru, but we're a Lucian Go campus, so the campus app and some push notifications.
Thanks. Nobody's using TikTok? We heard Pasadena Student Services using TikTok, but to lighten the mood. For our colleagues
our College Pathways team is using TikTok to help with the enrollment process for the fall, so we may need to jump on that bandwagon.
Excellent, excellent. For any colleagues on the webinar, if you don't know TikTok, it's a treasure. So we have some wonderful contributions that folks on the chat have made. I'd like to go over a couple of those. Someone put on that the CARES Act, the federal act, allows dropping courses, and dropped courses and students won't be impacted. Financial aid directors have concerns about partial withdrawals and things like that. But there's some relief in the CARES Act that we've seen. Let's see. Also, we have, oh yes, thank you. Somebody reminded us that the Chancellor's office is working with Next Gen Dynamic Forms for a contract for the system for e-signatures and e-forms. The agreement just came out tonight. Someone said that they would link to that in the chat. So thank you. We'll scoop all those resources. We know, I think, Tara, I think you said you were on the Next Gen webinar yesterday, and that seemed helpful.
Yeah, I believe it was, I think last Friday. The days are alternating.
We're running into each other, sorry.
Yes, I think, but it was some point last week. Yeah, it was last week on Friday for us, at least. So there was a healthy amount of people on that demo. And they seem to meet a lot of our compliance needs. They work with the software we have on our campus, which is Laserfish and PeopleSoft. So I think it's something we're exploring. It's just a larger discussion since so why A&R has so many forms. There's a lot of pockets of the campus who, given this time, why not, let's start this as a project for everybody across all areas who might have, different forms or needs from software like that.
And then we're going to have some more announcements towards the end of this webinar that talk to electronic forms. Another announcement from the chat, somebody asked about Bay Area meetings being open to Northern California. And then Amy Myers, our colleague, chimed in and said the Far North is meeting today. So if you want to get in contact with Amy Myers to be invited to that meeting, I would suggest dropping your email in the chat. Say, hey, Amy, invite us, and we can try and make those introductions as well. Let's see. Another idea. Okay. Sorry, I'm just catching up with the chat here. It's quite dynamic. I did want to ask a little bit about post COVID-19, post shelter in place world. We've seen a lot of changes in regulations, and I'm just kind of wondering, this is purely speculative, but what's your opinion? Would some of these things be appropriate to keep either for our students in general or for dual enrollment students in particular? Some of the reforms that we've seen. Don't be scared. I put the disclaimer. This is speculative. We're just thinking. We're thinking out loud.
Hi, could you ask that question again, please, Naomi?
Oh, sure. Is that Rosa?
Yeah.
Hi. You have the magic key that you unmuted yourself, but I'm glad you did. Sure. So I guess the question, and Rosa, I would like to invite you. Rosa de Anda is from the Chancellor's office, a wonderful colleague who works quite a lot in dual enrollment, the legal side. Do you think any of these temporary changes in regulation may take hold and stick around in a post-COVID world? And again, this is speculation. We're not holding you to this.
That's the million-dollar question. We don't know. I wish we could give you more concrete of an answer, but honestly, we don't know.
Thank you, Rosa. I appreciate that. This is, that just kind of speaks to the moment we're in. So maybe something for practitioners to pay attention to is, as these regulations are being temporarily changed or lifted or modified, keep track of what's been particularly helpful for your students. Yeah, that could be something to watch. I do want to see, we do have a number of resources that I wanted to share with folks. One person did put in the chat that moving to an electronic process permanently would be great. And one of the things, and I see lots of nods too, one of the things about this moment is that some colleges and districts had been preparing to do these kinds of switches. We heard from Foothill College last week, and they'd been preparing to move different processes to forms or to smart sheets, for example. And this just kind of accelerated everything. So we're seeing that. And somebody in the chat wrote yes and yes. So with that, I'd like to go to a couple of other resources that we'd like to share with everybody. So CLP actually just put out a new resource. This was supported by the College Futures Foundation. Last fall, we had a think tank with a college and a district and colleagues from across the state who have been moving towards an electronic form for dual enrollment, as well as other forms in there, other systemic approaches. And so we pulled together a think tank and got some examples, but also some things to kind of watch for. Amanda just put the link in the chat there. And so we wrote that up, the findings from that think tank, as well as some of the emerging practices that we've seen over the last few weeks in this rapid movement. And so we're very happy to share that with folks. There's also some great resources in there about the different legal aspects, right? So electronic signatures have actually been allowed for quite a long time for enrollment, as well as any student form. But there's caveats, right? They have to be verifiable and so on. And so there's links to those pieces of legislation in there that folks may find helpful. So you're allowed to do that. You have been for a while. And again, with the Chancellor's office working towards the next gen contract and Adobe Sign as well, is part of the Adobe suites, and that allows you to verify electronic signatures, and that's been adopted by the California Secretary of State. So those things they're helpful, and they're in this resource. Let's see, and we want to remind you also that next Thursday is going to be our last in this immediate series of webinars. So next Thursday, if you were forwarded the information about today's webinar and you didn't RSVP, please drop your email in the chat, and then we'll make sure to get this information out to you. And at that time, we will be looking to moving to a every other week format. And so I'm actually going to ask participants right now at the bottom of your, if you pull up the participant screen on your menu, at the bottom of that screen, there are some icons: yes, no, go slower, go faster, and so on. And so I'm just going to ask you for a very quick poll. Next week's our last weekly webinar. After that, would you be interested in attending every 2-week webinar on dual enrollment? So, wow, you guys are answering really fast. Okay, yeah. And one person did a thumbs up, so I'm going to count that as a yes. Oh, we got a no, that's cool. Yeah, okay. Okay, so it seems like a lot of folks are voting yes. Okay, great. We also have a community of practice on Basecamp. So we are going to be listing all the resources here actually in 3 places. So most immediately, we release them on the CLP website, and we have that link for you. We are also going to be listing them on the Vision Resource Center, which is open to anyone who has an email address associated with a California Community College campus. So those will be listed there as well. We're working with our colleagues at the Vision Resource Center to figure out what the protocol is for that. And then we also have a community of practice in a platform called Basecamp. And if you would like to be invited into Basecamp, we send out a follow-up email that tells you who to email to get that invitation. Basecamp is actually open to anyone we invite in. So our high school, our nonprofit, our advocacy groups, they can all be a part of that as well. And it's a place for practitioners to kind of talk to each other and source challenges and approaches together. There you see there's like a message board there. We also have documents listed in there. But we actually have a little bit of time left. So I'm going to ask a couple of more questions here. So we asked about CTE versus hands-on classes. Actually, Hartnell, we didn't really get a chance to hear from you, Laurencia. If you could address that question about CTE classes versus non-CTE classes, if you've seen any kind of disparate effect there with your students.
No, we haven't, but all of our CTE classes currently, they're not any of the sort of hands-on lab type CTE classes. There are certain business and administration of justice classes that are under the CTE umbrella.
Okay, thank you. Lizette, Rio, do you know in general, not in the area of, or maybe Tara, not in the area of dual enrollment particularly, but across campus, how your CTE classes have been affected? You might not know, so it might be an unfair.
I don't have a sense, no. I know that some of the same efforts are happening in pulling lists and things like that, and counselors are following up with students, but I don't know if there's been a breakdown by department or area.
Yeah, I know that right now they're working through that depending on the type of class, with the extension of the semester being allowed until June 30th. How would that maybe support CTE? But with the unknowns of when we can come back, and there's just a lot of things to continue to consider, but every day they're thinking through things.
Thank you. Laurencia, I wanted to ask you about enrollment for the fall also. I know that Hartnell does every year Panther Prep Days, which are pretty phenomenal, where students are bussed in from all over your service area. And your service area is quite large
Yes.
in the Salinas Valley. So have you, first of all, tell us the size of your service area and then how you're looking at the loss of Panther Prep Days, what you're going to do to mitigate that.
Sure. So our district ranges from the tip-top point of Prunedale to on the north side to King City on the south side, and that whole King City region. And so it's it's nearly 100 miles, and so in very rural areas. The Panther Prep process has turned into the Panther Prep Pledge, which is more self-guided, and students are able to look at YouTube videos and things of that sort. And our college pathways teams and counseling department has worked really hard to make that experience a virtual and remote one. And we also are using our dual enrollment classes as a means to communicate next steps for students. Obviously with AB 30, they get priority registration. So really trying to blend the two and maximize the dual enrollment classes as a means for early onboarding as well.
Fantastic. I do know that our colleagues at Foothill did look to this, to using the Smart Sheet form as a way of kind of pulling in their fall registration and making that sustain right now. Lizette, I thought it looked like you might have wanted to chime in. No, no, she's good. She's good. Well, I do want to ask Tara one more question. When we were prepping for this yesterday, you talked about the opportunity to learn more and work more with Lizette and Rio and their department. Sometimes it's challenging work between, as a former dual enrollment, running a dual enrollment program. Sometimes it was challenging for A&R and us to work together just because we sometimes spoke different languages or had kind of different realities. And it took a while to kind of get that flow going where we were working as a team. Can you talk to that just a little bit?
I think that experience is, in terms of the language, is the same with whichever department on campus is working with A&R, just in regards to some of getting on the same page with the ways we support students and how that might look different. In my time here, and Lizette can chime in, we've connected and had really good communication over ways in which we can streamline processes for the students. And for me, a learning opportunity to know who are these students in our Long Beach area and even outside who are using the campus in this way. Again, I had mentioned being at the 4-year before coming to Long Beach. So I think just in general, wanting to learn and have that desire to partner in that way, because they're such a vital part of our campus too. And it's one of the things I really like about being in the community college area. So I think it's really just about trying to focus and lead with student-centered questions and answers has helped us.
Fantastic. Yay. Yay. Folks, I really want to thank our presenters so much. And I'm going to ask us all, and I'll call your name so we know what order to go in, to just give us like a 1 or 2 word, something positive to look forward to in the midst of this unusual situation. So Lizette, we're going to ask you for your first word or 2 words, something positive.
Collaboration.
Excellent. Thank you. Tara.
Connection.
Great. Rio.
I'd say humility.
Beautiful. And Laurencia.
Compassion.
Thank you so much. Presenters, thank you so much. Colleagues, you're just so fantastic. You make this work just exciting, and you know, they throw the universe throws the craziest thing at us, and we just keep going and make sure our students are being served. So folks, we are going to leave the chat open for another 2 or 3 minutes so you can drop in emails or questions or resources in there. But you can join me in a virtual clap for our presenters. Thank you so much. And we will see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.